Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever in the world you are today. Karen, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can. Yeah, I
Woohoo.
can hear you now. Yes. How are you doing?
Good. Hanging in there. How about yourself?
Good, good. I think there's a little bit of a delay, actually.
Yes.
And I don't know why that's happening, but anyway, that means that probably your voice will be coming out after your video will be coming out after your voice, just in case.
We'll make it work.
Well, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna be reading your mouth. Oh no, that's no. We are already going to know what you said. So it's gonna be audio and then video. I don't know what's going on actually. I gotta say for everybody who is watching what we're doing, our coffee series of today. Today I am using a new system that I normally don't use, which is a StreamYard to broadcast our LinkedIn Live. I normally use Wirecast. I use a combination of Zoom and Wirecast, and I connect them both. And I think I'm going to go back to that. I think I like them better than the actual StreamYard because I like to have the voice with the mouth moving, so both at the same time, right? Anyway, I'll be coming back to my previous system. I thought this was going to be a little different, so that's part of the experimentation. That's part of the learning experience. So Karen, how are you doing?
We're hanging in there. We're in New York City, in Brooklyn, and we've been very fortunate that we've got space to be able to work from home. We've been healthy. Our family's been healthy. But it's definitely a very weird time, both to be in the city and obviously just within the world. But overall, of all things considered, we're doing okay.
Well, I'm glad to hear that your family are doing okay. In the middle of all these things that we're going on right now, that we're going through right now, and you are in New York City, so part of the epicenter of all that's happening here in the United States. So, Karen, thank you so much for being with me today, and I want to acknowledge, of course, the participation of our audience. Always early in the morning for those of you in Pacific time zone, which is what I am right now. That's my time zone, and we have people from all over the world. So it's great to see you all. Please let us know where you are connecting from. I like the Friday coffee series because it's less formal than the other things that I do. So so that's a pretty cool thing that we can have very lively and human conversations. And today we're going to have a two-part conversation. First half an hour, we're going to be talking about landing your ideal job. And then the second part is going to be how to network if you are an introvert, which if you can tell, I don't think I am an introvert, which I'm going to be learning a lot on how to include our introvert community in the events that we do. So Karen, let's dive right into the topic of landing your ideal job. The first thing that I want to ask you is it even possible to find an ideal job these days? And if so, how do you do it?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I was surprised as I've been talking to people who have been impacted by the pandemic and have lost their jobs, how many of them are actually wanting to take the time to figure out what they want out of their career. I thought for sure people would be really nervous and anxious and just kind of take whatever they could get because it was going to be few and far between opportunities. And so I think people are actually realizing that the human aspect of what's happening right now makes them reevaluate what's really important in their lives. And so if they're going to be spending all this time doing a job and working and away from their families, they want to make sure it's actually something they're enjoying. And so whether that is getting on a different path within their own industry or whether that is actually changing industries, they're taking this opportunity to do it because they are sort of recognizing the bigger picture, I think, right now. So ideal maybe in quotes, but I think finding the opportunity that actually gives you joy and fulfillment and feeds your passion, whatever that may be, is the thing that you really want to focus on if you can, financially and handle some of those things.
Absolutely. I think that's, if you can handle those things. I'm playing around, by the way, if you can tell. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't want to interrupt and distract people from what we're doing here, but it's so cool to play around stuff. So if somebody has a question, now I have the opportunity. That's cool about this system that I cannot do with the other one, but I can show the questions. So if you have a question, please let us know your questions. So it's great that you said what you said before, Karen, about if people have the financial, sort of I don't want to say freedom, but the slack, if you will, the financial slack these days, to step back a little bit from their day to day and rethink about what they want and how they want to make it happen. This is a great time to do it, right? Because there's a lot of rethinking, there's a lot of resetting, if you will. So, finding your ideal job, what does that entail? Like how do we even know what is an ideal job for some of us?
Yeah, I think first of all, I do want to share that even if you aren't at a place in your life where you can truly have the flexibility to say, I'm going to wait 6 months to find that ideal job, I think you can even find opportunities to still work within the new field you want to move into. Figuring out what's important to you at this point is what's going to lead you to something. Really, the goal is just to find something you don't actually hate. So it could be, if you want to be in the medical field, you could work as a receptionist within the medical field. So I think it doesn't have to be the ideal moment at this time, but finding something within a field that's going to give you that satisfaction. So I just want to make that caveat that I realize not everybody, some people need to find a job tomorrow. And I think my goal is that you're still finding something that is going to be of interest to you versus, just whatever thing shows up. So how do you decide what's of interest to you? I think really it's about what are things that are most important to you. First of all, identifying, is it flexibility in schedule? Is it pay? Is it part-time? Is it working with others? Is it, now needing to be home more often? What are some of those non-negotiables on the baseline piece? So that sort of answers the initial question of, what am I just looking for in general when I think about a job? Then take a step back and go, what do I actually enjoy doing in my day-to-day? It could be you love interacting with people. It could be you really enjoy helping people. It could be you're really inspired by creativity or innovation and you want to be able to get your hands on whatever the next new thing is going to be. So what are those things that really get you excited about either what you do today, or when you think about your hobbies, or when you think about what other people do or what you hear in the world? And then you can kind of start to put those two things together to start to see what could that actually look like for me.
That is fantastic. And I think it's a very personal quest, if you will, right? One that not always happens because, life happens and the bills come through every month and you got to pay the bills. And I want to ask you, and I went through this experience myself, but I want to ask you, there are people right now who are out of job, out of work, but there are also people who are in a job that they truly hate. And they are also in the quest to find their ideal job, if you will. So for those that are in that place of, I have a job, I am thankful and fortunate to have a job, but I'm still looking for the next thing, what would that search for them look like? Which is different for those who are out of job, that they may need to make a decision based on urgency and not necessarily on what's ideal to them.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think if you have the stability of the job today, I think you can take more time to explore and network and ask questions of other people. So, go on LinkedIn and search for people that have job titles that might be of interest to you. What companies are interesting? Maybe you've heard about, some tech company or some banking company that sounds really interesting. So what are some interesting companies? Are they even hiring? Who could you reach out to and start to talk to them about that? Is there someone that you actually know at one of those companies, or a friend of a friend that could give you an introduction? Not even to make the job change right now, but to learn about that company, learn about the kind of work that person does. You're a product manager at a bank. Well, that's going to be very different than a product manager at a startup tech company. And so what does that difference mean? So just starting to have those conversations and starting to learn, I think, is a great start, especially if you've got the stability of the job today.
Love that. And I think we are so connected on that recommendation because, first of all, you want to know what the ideal, like you said before, the ideal career, which may not be too far in the long term, but it's somewhat the path in which you want to go. You want to look at the people who have already walked through that path, right? Mm-hmm. You want to know the skills they have. You want to know the journey they've gone through. You want to know the jobs they've had. If they transition from one area to another, you want to know how they do it. And to do that, you're going to have to do a lot of research. And LinkedIn is a great place to do it. And this idea of talking to people, I think is so important. People used to come, when I had my job before, and now even with Hacking HR, asking for recommendations. And I would always tell them, before coronavirus, you got to go and drink, 100 coffees with 100 different people. because you never know which one of them will get you closer to the information that you need or to the job that you need. You should never start the conversation as, get me a job, because that's not how you and I'm guessing that you get emails like this all the time.
Yes.
Like, I'm out of job, get me a job. And I'm like, that's not how you start a conversation. Ask me if I know somebody in your network, if I can give you some recommendations and whatnot. And little by little, you're going to get closer to that ideal situation, to that ideal job. So we're going to be talking about networking, by the way, in the next segment of today's conversation. So this is fascinating, Karen, because there's opportunity for people right now, whether they have the urgency or whether they have the flexibility because they still have a job, to step back a little bit, like we said before, and rethink about what they want in their careers. Let me ask you something sort of related. There are a lot of people that are thinking about switching careers, because for them, they had envisioned something about what they started doing, and that ended up not being what they wanted it to be. So they want to switch to something else. So they want to go into something more ideal, for them. So what's your recommendation for people that are switching from one career to another?
So as a former stage manager who was working in Hollywood at the beginning of my career, I definitely understand that exploration. So when I went through that experience, I was trying to think through, first of all, of the things I am doing, what do I actually like? So for me, it was helping actors with their careers because I was working for a talent agent. And as a stage manager, I really liked creating a shared experience for the audience. And so I started talking to different people about, if this is what I like doing, what could that mean for for a corporate job, for lack of a better phrase? And more people started saying, oh, I think that might be HR. You should talk to this person. You should talk to that person. And I started talking to them about, what does HR actually mean? And that's what sort of got me into that path. And then the first job I took was actually more of an office admin job, but they didn't have an HR person. And so they hired me as a temp to just help them clean up some files. And as I got to know them, they were asking what I wanted to do next. And I shared my story of how I sort of got to the point where I decided I wanted to move into HR. And they said, we've got a couple of HR projects. We don't have an HR person. Do you want to keep working with us and kind of figure this out? And I said, of course, yes. And 15, 18 years later, here we are. And so I think the identifying what it is you like to do and how that can translate to another job, and then sharing that story with people, because you never know who's going to help you, but then also identifying how those skills are transferable. So as a stage manager, I was wicked organized. I knew how to deal with a lot of different personalities, how to influence situations, and help translate that then as an HR person. Well, you have to deal with a lot of difficult personalities. You have to handle a lot of different projects. You have to be very organized and very sort of calm, cool, and collected. And so being able to explain how those skills transfer will be really important, both literally on a resume and that piece so you get recognized, but then also during interviews and help them understand that piece.
And I love that you're connecting some of the skills that are very specific for some careers, but there are some other skills that are relevant across the board.
Yes.
And skills that some people that are looking for their ideal job may not necessarily have. So in your career, as you have transitioned from one area to another, how do you identify the kind of skills that you may think are relevant for kind of across the board, right? Whether you are in HR, in marketing, sales, or whatever it is. And by the way, your voice now is together with your video, which is fantastic.
Yay! So I think this goes back to research. So one thing that I was doing after I did this sort of that initial HR job and I wanted to get more into a generalist role, I actually would just look at different HR jobs and look at what kind of skills they were looking for. And then A, is it something I have? So it's more of a soft skill that I can transfer. Or B, I don't know anything about benefits. How do I learn about benefits? And nowadays, with all these different online classes and General Assembly and Teachable and all these different places, you can hacking HR, of course. There's a lot of places where you can gain these skills where it's actually not expensive. You don't have to go back to school. You can find something that works for your budget and your time. And that's another thing that folks that are out of work right now can be doing, is continuing to build and hone their skills and keeping their mind fresh, whether that's learning a new skill. Like I just decided I want to be an engineer and I need to learn Python. So let me find some online Python class. Or it is, I want to stay within HR, but I haven't been exposed to benefits that much. So let me do some research on, let me take some classes on benefits to build new skills there. So that's another great thing you can be doing, especially if you're in between jobs right now.
No, that is powerful. And even though we're going to be talking about this in the next conversation, which is network for introverts, and I want to ask the audience, if you feel like it, of course, if you want to share with us whether you feel you are an introvert, an extrovert, or an ambivert, which is also a thing. I myself, I am professionally, I am extroverted, and I don't have any problems with speaking in a big audience or doing videos and whatnot. More personally, on a more one-on-one kind of conversation, I am more introverted, which is kind of an interesting conversation. How about you, Karen? What's your style, and how do you bring that style into landing your ideal job?
Yeah, I think because so much of my work is extroverted, at home, I'm much more of an introvert. I like reading my book. I like listening to music, very sort of, I need to regroup. While, whether it's speaking in front of people or, talking to candidates I've never met before. So all of a sudden I have to make an instant connection, or helping employees become comfortable talking to me about, maybe tough situations. I'm definitely extroverted there, but then I think that sucks all my energy. So by the time I get home, it's crash and burn. My poor husband, I'm like, leave me alone. I need a minute.
Now, how do you bring that? I'm looking at a meme actually that I was just thinking about it right now, and I hope that when our next panelists join the conversation, we're going to be talking about it. And it is, some introverts saying like, what do we want? Get together. How do we want to do that? Separately. So how do you bring that reality, of your personality styles to landing your career, your ideal career? And the reason why I also ask this question is because people come across in very different ways. I am Latino. I am loud. I am like, making noise and, loud and, about things. And so I may come across differently to a culture, like, for example, the American culture, as I would to other South American countries. Same thing with people from, maybe some African countries or Southeast Asia, Pacific region. So, we all have our different personalities. So how do you think we can sort of think about our personal styles when we are looking for that ideal job?
That's a great question. I think that that's where the industry and the culture of the company start to come into play. So I can be an accountant in pretty much probably any company in the world. But when I think about my personality, it's probably more startup-y or more of a progressive company or more open and transparent. One of my second HR jobs was with a global consulting firm, very well respected, very honored to work there. But we had to call the guy who ran the company Mr. So-and-so. And I'm like, no, you're not that special. Like, we're all in this together. That hierarchy really bothered me. Yeah. And we had to wear suits and all, and it just wasn't me. So that's actually what got me into the tech space and into startups. And that fits my personality much better. And it doesn't mean that I can't, sort of turn on the professionalism, and whether it's, speaking or dealing with board members, or if I have to go through a tough conversation with someone, clearly I, clean it up and put my best foot forward. But at the end of the day, it's still me, and I can still be the person I am. And that comes through, because I think in any interview, if you are not being your authentic self, they see through that, and they're going to think they will see something that's not going to resonate, and you probably will not continue in that.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I gotta say, I am the same way. I'm an outdoor junkie, and I like to wear my hat and, look at me, look at my pictures back there. And I really dislike, when you have to be forced into a box that does not make any sense for your work. Yeah. It is like, wait a second, you gotta come wearing this kind of, attire, and, you cannot wear a hat. And I'm like, what the hell does that have to do with my work? Yeah. My creativity does not rely on whether I'm wearing a hat or not. It actually is, part of who I am.
Yeah.
But we got to understand that for some people, the ideal job may be that one job of not wearing a hat and wearing a tie and whatnot, and they got to adapt to that, right?
Yeah.
We got this very interesting question here from Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. We're putting you on the spot. I think I'm liking this system a little bit more now that I said at the beginning. Your suggestion of having coffee with different people. How do you suggest doing that on LinkedIn? I gotta say, and Karen, I want to hear your thoughts too. Part of the landing an ideal job and part of the networking also has a little bit of a component of fearlessness. And that fearlessness comes by accepting the fact that for every 10 people that you invite to something, to network or something, maybe, 4 of them will ignore you, 2 of them will say no, and the other 3, or the other 4 will maybe say, yes, they will, somehow want to network with you. So that component of fearlessness means that you're just going to reach out to people and send them an email or send them a LinkedIn message and say, hey, Enrique, Karen, you guys, I know I'm an engineer. Enrique, you're an engineer. I'm also an engineer. You switch to HR. I want to switch to HR. Do you have, half an hour sometime over the next month or so, to get together for a conversation about this one or that one thing? And I would love to do it. And I want to add something. This is a little Machiavellic, by the way, Karen. I just got to warn you about this. I read a fascinating book called The 48 Laws of Power by an author called, his name is Robert Greene. And I read this book probably 15 or 20 years ago. And I don't remember all of the laws, but one of them says, appeal to people's selfishness and not to their mercy. And what they were saying is that when you reach out to somebody, try to also make sure that the person knows that you're reaching out to them because you consider them a role model, or not saying like, oh, please help me because, that may appeal to some people, but maybe, make sure that you are acknowledging the reason why you're reaching out to that person. Karen, do you want to add anything to this question?
Yeah, it's funny. It actually came up on a webinar I did earlier this week, and they were nervous that they were going to come across as desperate or salesy or whatever. And I said, it's all about the tone. If you reach out and say, and by the way, make it individualized. So that's part of what you were just saying about, making it a little bit about me. But if you copy and paste the same thing to everybody, I'm less likely to be interested in what you're doing, because you didn't reach out to me, you reached out to 20 HR people that just happen to be in your list. Yeah. But if you talk about, I know you made a career change, you've worked in tech startups, I'm interested in that. Is there any way you're willing to chat for a little bit? Those sort of things make it more personal and make me more interested in doing it. But I agree with you. I believe this in every part of people's lives and their careers. If you don't ask, the answer is absolutely no. But it's all about how you ask and how you go about it, and putting yourself out there. You'll get some yeses back, but you have to at least put yourself out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, putting yourself out there, standing out of the crowd. We had the session that we had last week, Karen. We were talking about building your personal and professional brand. And unfortunately, this gets, very often it gets mistaken by being silly or faking it till you make it, which I hate that expression. But if you want to reach out, if you want to get that ideal job, you will have to somehow sell something. In this case, your skills, your capacities to do that job better than anybody else. And you may say like, well, I don't like to compete with others, but you're competing because there's just one job, and there may be 100 people applying for that job. So you're gonna have to, get out of that comfortable cocoon in which a lot of people reside all the time, and being a little fearless. You're gonna have to get out of your comfort and start reaching out to people, being more comfortable with being uncomfortable by doing that, whether introverted or not. Because at the end of the day, if you are the best person in the world for that job, but nobody knows you, you won't get it.
Yeah.
We got this other question here. I know this question is hard, and I like it. It's gonna put us on the spot. Do employers actually look at those certifications? How big of an impact, etc.? I want to add something to that, but Karen, do you want to go first on that question?
Sure.
I'm putting you in the spot.
I think it depends on the field. So I'm going to assume it's not like CPA or something like that, where you really do need those
Yeah.
credentials to get the job. But I think of, something like my HR credentials. I think earlier in my career, it helped because it showed my dedication to the field. And it showed that I was trying to build my knowledge in a field that was newer to me. And so I think it helped me then. To be completely honest, I think at this point in my career, my work stands for versus the certification. So I think if it is a certification that actually is giving you skills to help you do the job, that's helpful, obviously, because you're learning something. And I think it will also show that I'm making the switch. I think she was trying to go to sales to marketing, or I forget which direction, but it shows I'm committed to this. I'm not just trying to put my resume out there to get anything. I'm interested in marketing. I know HubSpot's really important, so I went ahead and got certified on HubSpot. I think something like that is much more valuable than some random certification out there.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it really depends on the place in which you are in your career, where you want to move to, and the things that you're going to be doing in that new ideal role. Like, I got a PMP, which I actually have never used in HR. And so when people in HR ask me, like, do you think PMP is relevant for HR? And normally I say, if you have limited resources and limited amount of time, I would start with something on the agile design thinking space rather than on the PMP space. I'm not saying that getting a PMP is not important. I'm saying that I think there are other certifications for your limited amount of resources and time that may be more relevant for the direction in which you want to go, and also the place in which you are in your career. If I am analyzing a resume and I see somebody who is just starting to work, their first year, and they have a PMP, that may not be as powerful as somebody who has, maybe 10 or 15 years of experience with a PMP, because a PMP requires more of an experience than not, right? So I think it depends. I know we are, the person who asked this question will probably say, like, oh, they didn't answer the question. But the reality is that it all depends. So you got to step back a little bit and think, like Karen said before, let me look at the people who have been on this journey, on this path before me. Let me see what they have done. If what I want to do, if when I am investigating about people who do what I want to do, and 95% of them have PMP, then I gotta get a PMP, right? Because it seems that to be successful in that career, you gotta have a PMP. Whereas if you see that you think I need to get a PMP to do this job, and you find people, and 95% don't have a PMP, but they have an agility certification, then maybe you step back and say, you know what? Maybe the PMP will wait a little longer, and I'm gonna get the agility certification. So great question. Karen, as we wrap up our conversation about landing your ideal job, we covered a lot of ground here. I know, and I am hoping that our listeners and watchers are getting a lot of great insights here from you, and taking a lot of notes. But is there anything else that you want to add? In terms of what's recommendations for skills, practices for people to land their ideal job?
Yeah, I think I would just sort of summarize it with, first of all, think about what that ideal job actually is, both the non-negotiables within the job structure, but then also what's changing you. Is it you're trying to change within your field? Is it you're trying to go into a new field? What does ideal mean? And do some self-discovery there. Then figure out who else is doing it, and so you can start to network and ask questions, and then think about those transferable skills, or where the skill gaps are, and how you're going to be able to communicate that. And I think I always like to leave people with, what can I do later today, or what can I do tomorrow? And I think the first step is to do that discovery of, what am I happy today? Am I not happy today? What do I want to change? What does ideal look like? Why do I not feel like I'm in my ideal job now, or what I was just working in? And that's the first step, because otherwise you'll be all over the place, and it'll be more grass is greener on the other side versus what's actually important to me and what's actually going to drive me to be happy next.
That is fascinating. And I want to add one additional thought on that, which, I think we covered during the conversation. Nobody will do the things for you. Let me just put it this way.
Yeah.
Nobody will do the things for you. I mean, one of the things that frustrated me the most about traditional workplaces is that some people expect the workplace to design learning plans for them, or to give them the opportunity to sign up for a program and whatnot. And while I think you can do that, at the same time, I think you have to push yourself. You have to be self-directed or self-driven to learn and to do the things that you need to do. So because nobody will do the things for you, your ideal job will not come, and it will be a miracle if it does, but it will not come because Karen will call you and say like, hey, I got your ideal job and I'm going to offer it to you even though I don't know who you are. I think it's going to happen the other way around, which is you are pushing the envelope, you're reaching out to Karen, and then you're telling Karen, I saw this job posted on this on your website, and I know you're the head of HR in your organization, and I have all these skills. Can we have a conversation? It will happen because you're making it happen, not because Karen will make it happen for you. Yeah. So, Karen, thank you so much for being in this conversation with us today. We're switching now to the next part of our conversation, which is about how to network as an introvert. So, Karen, thank you so much. And I'm going to welcome now Tracy, Julie, and Eric coming up. Thank you, Karen.
Bye, everyone. Have a great day.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, wait. Where's Tracy? Hello.
Hello.
How is everybody doing?
Very well, thank you.
Good. Well, good to see you all. And let me do something because I'm using a new system. And Julie, my head is half cut. So let me just remove that thing from the thing. There you go. Thank you so much for being here. It's amazing to see you all. And before getting into the conversation that we have today, I want to tell everybody once again, thank you for being connected here. If you haven't told us where you're connecting from in the world, please do so on the LinkedIn chat. It would be amazing to know where you're from or where you're connecting from. And Julie, Eric, and Tracy, they were part of a panel that we put together for our Hacking HR Global Conference back in March. And it was a panel about how to network when you are an introvert. And it's going to be very interesting to have this conversation today because we just had a talk about how to land your ideal job. So let's do the following. Let's do a quick round of introductions to begin with, and then we're gonna, dive right into the topic. But first, I want to say this. I just said it before, but there's a meme that I have in here. I cannot share it, but it says, it's about introverts, and it says, what do we want? Get together. How do we want to do it? Separately. So, represent, it reminds me of your email, Tracy, preparing for this conversation. We want to get together, but in our own homes. So anyway, let's do a quick round of introductions, and then we're going to take it from there. Julie, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. So my name is Julie Turney, and I am based in Barbados. I have been in HR for the last 15 years. I have a very strong love relationship with HR, but I am very much an introvert. So for me, events like this, when this is over, I gotta hit something to help me just, wind down in a cool and a calm way, because I think a lot of times people get it confused that introverts don't know how to speak publicly, but we do. We may not love it, but we have no problem doing it. It's just how we deal with our downtime directly after that. So as I said, I'm an HR professional. I have been in human resources for 15 years. I currently work for an organization that specializes in e-commerce products, and they are based here in Barbados. But I also am an HR consultant. I do offer HR for HR services, supporting HR professionals who are struggling in their careers. I also lead the Disrupt HR chapters for Barbados, Trinidad, and Jamaica. And I also have a podcast called HR Sound Off, where I sound off with HR professionals on topics that are pertinent to our profession. But we also talk about the things that many misconceptions that people have about human resources that really drive us crazy, and we just want to set the record straight on them. Right, Enrique? That's what we do. That's what we do, guys.
I will ask you, how do you do all that as an introvert? Because I am sure that many folks in this call will get very inspired by you. Eric, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm happy to. My name is Eric Kershot. I'm the owner of Harmony Insights LLC. It's a company that allows me to work with organizations and consultants using the DISC personality assessment. A lot of that is done online these days since we can't get together face to face. I'm also the founder of HR Hot Seat, which is an inclusive HR mastermind community. I think we have at this point over 2,500 members in 10 different licensed chapters around the country. And we bring HR professionals and those who want to serve HR professionals together for a mastermind style conversation. And these days, I'm running a near daily lunch conversation that I'm calling Harmony Insights Lunch Dates, just 30-minute conversations on Zoom to bring people together to connect meaningfully and be inspired to do their best work.
Thank you so much for being here. And I see you're digging the work from home look. Love it.
At first, it was just lazy, and then I was like, hey, this is kind of fun, so we'll let it go.
Well, it looks great. Looks great. Tracy, hello.
Hi, I'm Tracy Spanenberg. I'm the Chief People Officer for a company called the Granite Group. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So the Granite Group's based in the northeast of New England. So we're in 6 states, 45 locations, about 600 people, and we're a wholesaler of plumbing, heating, cooling, water, and propane supplies. So, and Julie, I'm so excited to see Julie. I saw Eric earlier this week in a lunch date. So exciting to see him. But so Julie and I have a lot of parallels. So I co-organize Disrupt HR for New Hampshire. I have a podcast as well, and so I think it definitely is a misconception. Julie and I have talked quite a bit about that introverts can't speak and they can't do this, they can't do that. Actually, something like this is made for us. So we're seeing each other, and there could be hundreds or thousands of people out there that we can't see. It's the virtual world is a much more comfortable setting, I think.
That is amazing. And
So
I can tell that you
happy to
love
be here.
movies.
I do. These are actually old, and my parents moved years ago. I rescued these from their home. So they're all from the 90s, but they're all pretty cool movies.
Hey, we got to go back to the classics, both the movies and the
Right.
book too, especially these
Right.
days. It's funny. I was
Right.
reading the book about, it's called Future Shock by Alvin Toffler. And it was written 50 years ago, and you read it and you think that it was written yesterday for all that we're going through. So thank you so much for being here once again for everybody. Thank you also for connecting. Let us know if you have any questions for this amazing panel. And we're going to be talking about how to network as if you are an introvert. So let me just, ask the question: how do you network if you're an introvert? How, what do you do that? How do you do it, especially for you personally, to break perhaps the barriers of being surrounded by, crowds of people in events, which, who knows when that's going to be back. But how do you network? That's the main question. How do you network as an introvert? Anybody?
Yeah, I think I didn't for a long time because I didn't think I could. And I thought of networking as just being out at one of those events and walking up to random people and saying hi and shaking their hand, the little name tags. And then over time, I learned to, if I was in that situation, identify somebody in the room who looked as miserable as I looked and try to kind of go up to them and just start slowly talking. So that's a tactic that helped. And then I think I really didn't understand networking until I connected on Twitter and on LinkedIn and understood a virtual network. So there are so many more ways to network than just going in person and grabbing a drink at the bar with somebody.
That's amazing. Julie, I want to ask you, same question, but I want to add the component of you and I being from not from the US, which when I moved here, I understood the value of networking, which I hadn't understood before in my birth country, Venezuela. So the question for you is like a 2-part question. One, how do you network being an introvert? And the second part of the question is, what's the value of networking across the board? It doesn't matter where you are in the world, but what's the value of networking?
So for me, networking, I think similar to Tracy, I had a lot of fears going into events and networking with people. And I kind of just would find someone who made eye contact with me that looked like we related to something that was being said. And that's how I would start my connection with someone. And I kind of like stick with that one person until like someone may come over and then talk to that person. And then I either shy away or we're engaged in the conversation together. And that's how it kind of worked for me. Being from Barbados, there are lots of events that happen here outside of the HR space that are good opportunities to network and meet business professionals on a whole. But when there are HR events, because we're such a small island, everyone here who is in HR pretty much knows everyone else that's in HR. So that's an advantage for us. So like when we come to our annual conferences or annual general meetings as an association, then you kind of get to know people. But so it's not that bad. And for the most part, a lot of them I went to school with. So that makes it a little bit easier as well. Networking, I'm sorry, what was the other question?
You already responded part of the question as well,
Yeah.
which is, it was related about, or it was trying to encourage people that do not necessarily see the value of networking, which is, by the way, I said before that in some of it was here in the United States where I learned the value of networking, but not everybody networks here either way, right? And in our countries, well, at least in my country, Venezuela, back when I started working, 20 plus years ago, I really didn't see the value of networking. All that I did to find a job was to go to the receptionist of a company and give my paper resume, and that was pretty much it. There was no networking. So I'm glad that you're saying how important it is for for people in general.
Yes, it really is important to network, and I think I learned the value of it when I joined associations like SHRM and CIPD. Then I learned the value of networking. But what I love is the value of using LinkedIn, and I think that that's what's made it a lot easier for me as an introvert, because it's an immediate one-on-one relationship that you're establishing with someone. So I made it my endeavor to widen my HR community. And the one way that I chose to do that was to reach out to people on LinkedIn. So periodically, and if you're on this call and you are an HR professional and you've seen something from me, please accept it, man. But but I say that to say that's how I found it easier as an introvert to network. And I thank goodness for LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram and those mediums where you're able to just go in and immediately make a connection with someone. And I just start my conversations by saying, I'm an HR professional. I would love to learn more from you because I don't know it all. And usually, generally, people will connect that way. And obviously, ultimately, I thank goodness for Hacking HR, because that's how I met these two beautiful people below here, as well as yourself, Enrique. So definitely networking has great value. You just have to do what works for you. But as an introvert, we value the one-on-one connections for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Julie. Eric, I want to ask you this. Not only are you an introvert, and not only do you also have to network like everybody else, but you create other networks. So not only are you a networker, you are a creator of networks. So you are a little bit farther down the road than a lot of other introverts that are starting their journey to network. So how do you do that? How do you network, but also how do you create other communities for people to network?
So I realized really early on that I had to redefine what networking was and figure out a way to do it in a way that was going to be comfortable for me. So what was it that I was doing and how was I doing it? And I didn't care for the word network. And once I realized that networking is just connecting meaningfully with other people, that's something I could identify with. I think there's this mischaracterization of introverts that we don't want to connect with people. We want to go hang out by ourselves in a room somewhere, close the doors and the windows, and escape society. And even Susan Cain herself, a popular author on the topic of introversion, said that introverts want to connect too. We just want to do it in a different way, maybe one-on-one in smaller groups and in different environments. So when I realized that networking was just connecting, that's something I wanted to do. Number two, how I did it. I couldn't do it the way that other people did it. I didn't want to be in a room full of 50 people, most of whom I didn't know, trading very superficial sentiments and exchanges, and feeling like I have to come home with a million business cards. I wanted to have a single, deep, meaningful connection and start there and maybe even end there and call that networking, call that connection, and say, I've done what I came to do. Very selfishly, as I was putting myself in these positions to network a little bit more traditionally, I thought, I want to create the environment that I would want to network in. If I'm not finding it myself, I want to create this environment. And that's kind of how the HR hot seat community got started. So in short, I said, okay, what would be comfortable to me? Well, a smaller group, a more intimate group, maybe no longer larger than 10 or 12 people, and where there's structure. So I'm not just standing there staring at you for 10 minutes trying to come up with something interesting to say. We have some structure to that conversation. And that was the beginning of HR Hot Seat, and that has turned into something that is much larger, where we have, here in Chicago, we've had over 120 people come together for a single in-person event when we could do those, but we still break up into smaller groups of 10 so that people who are a little bit more on the introverted side and appreciate that structure feel comfortable coming together and really connecting meaningfully with one another.
That is fantastic, and I know you've done a great work connecting people and creating an environment, an inclusive environment for people who are extroverts, introverts, ambiverts, to find a place in the mastermind conversations. You said a word, and I want to ask you about this. You said a word that it's very interesting to me. It's about feeling comfortable. But what when I say the following statement, what do you think about it? Being comfortable with being uncomfortable, meaning, normally when you push a little bit further out of your, the things that you traditionally do, you're going to get into a territory of things that you haven't explored before, and that's going to make you uncomfortable. And I know, Eric, you've been here because you're creating communities, so you are in a territory. When you started, you were in a territory of things that you didn't know before, so you felt comfortable doing that. So what do you think when I say the statement of feeling comfortable with being uncomfortable, and how does that play out for introverts in their work to build networks, if you will? So this question is for everybody, by the way.
I love that. And actually, as you say that, I'm seeing all of these pictures behind you. I think I see Horseshoe Bend over your right shoulder in Utah, and I immediately think of the different places that I've been that have pushed me outside of my comfort zone. And that's one of my favorite quotes, that anything worthwhile that's going to happen to you in life is going to happen outside of your comfort zone. And we each have one, and for some of us it's more broadly defined, for some of us it's a little bit more narrowly defined. But I will say that I would be less effective as a community builder, as a communicator, as a connector, if I recognize what my comfort zone is and remained within those boundaries. The fact that I've pushed beyond that and I've recognized, oh, this is making me feel a little uncomfortable, or this looks different. What does this feel like? Why? Am I nervous? Am I anxious? If so, why is that the case? And rather than retreating then into an environment that makes me a little bit more comfortable, really pushing that a little bit and saying, what is there to be learned out here? What am I learning about myself or other people? How am I learning to adapt in ways that might feel unnatural, might take me a little bit of time, might take me a little bit of focus, but ultimately allow me to connect more meaningfully with other people as I go?
That is powerful. Tracy, I know you want to add something. And when you add something, Tracy, I also want to ask you, together with all that, how do you lead HR from that perspective?
Sure. And I know Julie's going to talk about her year of yes, which was sort of me without formality a few years ago. And I know we've talked about this quite a bit. And I made a conscious effort after living in my comfort zone for 40 years to really get out of it, and get out of it in a big way. And it literally changed my life. And I think, like Eric said, nothing good happens inside your comfort zone, and everything you want is really just outside that. So what I did was start to say yes and then figure it out. So you want me to speak here? Never spoken before? Sure. I'll figure it out. You want me to do this? I have no idea how to do a keynote in front of a group of 200 people, but I'll figure it out. And I think that's really important. If something scares you, probably is the right thing to do. And I think that translates pretty well into leading a team. And I think as an introvert, again, there's a lot of misconceptions. A lot of people think introverts can't lead, and that's just not the case. We may do it differently. We may do it more quietly, more thoughtfully. I have a close friend, Michelle Strasberger, who's an extrovert. And so she's always, ready, fire, aim. So she just goes. And so she has an influence on me that way, whereas I'm kind of ready, aim, fire. And so she kind of pushes me, and I pull her back a little bit so we both learn from each other. So I have a tendency to overthink decisions. And so by partnering with friends and colleagues, that's really helped me, I think, really grow as a leader. And it's also important that I understand my team, they understand me, that we work really closely together so that we share each other's styles so that we understand how we can work together. And I think that goes a long way toward leading.
Love that recommendation, that about balance, but also about including people who are different than you and can bring some level of not necessarily balance, but they can push you in a direction that you may not normally walk through, right? Because it's not what comes naturally. Love that. Julie, this question adding the amazing idea of the year of yes, which I'm sure everybody will want to know about.
My year of yes started September 2019. Actually, you were at the beginning of my year of yes.
Me?
And yes, you were.
Thank you.
And there were two people who were at the beginning of my year of yes, and you were one, and also Jennifer McClure. And it's so funny because I went to quite a few Disrupt HR events and realized I really loved it. And I was like, I really need to bring this to Barbados. We need something like this here to shift the envelope and help HR professionals to think differently. But one of the things, as Tracy rightly said, as introverts, we kind of have the tendency to stay in our head a bit too long before we execute things. And I was staying in my head about it, and I kept saying to myself, but someone else could do this way better than me. And I started to think about all of the people who could do this way better than me. And having a conversation one day actually with Tracy, and she was like, well, why not you? Why couldn't you do it? And it really made me think, and it kind of propelled me into other things that I wanted to do. But then that year of yes simply started with one Disrupt HR event that said to me, why can't you cross the line and step out of your comfort zone and do the things that you want to do? Like this particular moment, extremely comfortable. I'm not going to tell you a lie. I'm uncomfortable, but I'm here and I'm going to get this done. And I think I've done the same thing as Tracy and maybe Eric. Like, we've just started stuff and been like, okay, we'll figure it out. And that's what my year of yes has been. So I started with Disrupt HR Barbados, and I was like, but the rest of the Caribbean could benefit from this. Why can't I do it in Jamaica? Why couldn't I do it in Trinidad? And then just like that, one conversation with Jennifer, and she was like, but yeah, that makes perfect sense. So we go to Trinidad, we go to Jamaica to get it done. And the same thing happened with my podcast. I just knew that I had something to say. I knew I wanted to say it, and I didn't want to do stuff like this. I didn't want to be on video doing it, but I knew I had something that I wanted to say. And I actually, again, benefits of LinkedIn and networking with people who are different from you, met this lady by the name of Cher Jones from Canada, who has a show that she does every Tuesday on LinkedIn, and just listening to some of the things that she said. And one night she talked about podcasting, and I was like, I'm going to do it. And I said, okay, I'm going to try 10 episodes and I'm going to see how this goes. And if people are attracted, if the only person who listens to this podcast is my mom, I'm okay with that at first. And then if other people follow along, then so be it. And that's how I started my podcast. And I was like, okay, so 10 episodes in, what are you going to do now? And I was like, I did not know if this thing was going to get traction. I didn't know how my audience was going to receive it. But I've had nothing but constructive feedback, even from better tips in how to approach my audience, how to do the show. So when I first started, you can clearly tell that I wrote down the questions and I was looking down and asking people questions, and looking down and asking the questions. You can tell from my first maybe 5 episodes that's what I did. But as I got more comfortable doing it, I was like, okay, these are just conversations, Julie. You have conversations with people every single day. Structure this in such a way that you're just asking the same frame of questions, but you're having a conversation where you're totally engaged with your audience. And since then, my podcast audience has tripled. I'm getting more engagement. I'm enjoying the conversations that I'm having now because I'm not focused or glued to questions. And because I've had people in my life, like you guys, who have given me such great encouragement and who have given me great feedback, it's really helped me to excel now at what I do. But getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, the first time I heard that statement was Lavi Ajayi on a TED talk that she gave. And the TED talk was actually get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And she talked about her experiences with living outside of her comfort zone.
Yeah.
And it really does help you to appreciate that if you put people in your space and connect meaningfully, as Eric said, if you make meaningful connections with people who want good for you, it takes your relationships, your career to a completely different level.
Yeah.
So it's a blessing for sure.
That's fascinating, and I love that you're living in your year of yes. And I think there's going to be a year of yes reloaded after September of 2020, and I'm hoping so. We're going to do now a very quick round of questions. People that we're getting some questions from the audience. So whoever wants to answer the question, let's try to get as many as possible. One question was about your favorite ways as introverts to network and develop relationships virtually.
As I said before, sorry, do you want to go first?
No, go Julie. Go Julie.
So for me, I really benefited from networking on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. And then I created the Calendly event, and I just share that link with people, which then takes us straight to a one-on-one Zoom call. And that has worked really well for me in networking and getting to know people. Like I said, I value the one-on-one. Yeah. And LinkedIn is my sweet spot. And that's where most of my audience sits. And I connect and I network there.
LinkedIn, do it. Fortunately, that question came from LinkedIn, by the way. Yeah. Tracy, you were going to add something?
Yeah, love LinkedIn. Similar to Julie, I started, though I dipped my toe in networking a few years ago, and started by reaching out to people that I admired that were doing good things in the space, including you, Enrique. I think I reached out to you like super early on in hacking HR, and I just thought what you were doing was really cool. And I've not found somebody who said no yet to a chat, a call. I have not found that yet. And when someone reaches out to me, I don't say no. So I think I'm not as formal as Julie. I watch Julie every day. She's doing amazing things. But I try to connect with a lot of coffee chats, and that's been really fun lately.
Awesome. Eric, do you want to add anything to that?
I'm happy simply to say that I try to network online the way that I do in person. Find first a topic that really inspires me, almost guaranteeing that the other people who show up for that topic, we're going to share something in common, and kind of take it from there and see where it goes.
Awesome. We got another question here. This is a very interesting question about how recommendations for extroverts to talk to introverts without being, on top of the introvert. So any recommendations in that end?
I'll run with that. I do a lot of work with personality styles and personality assessments, and the main takeaway, and I want to make this so clear, it's not about changing who you are. If you're naturally energetic, you should be energetic. If you're naturally more thoughtful and introspective, you should be those things. But our ability to connect with one another meaningfully starts with our ability to adapt meaningfully to one another's communication style. So what I usually recommend for extroverts is saying you don't have to change who you are, but recognize there's going to come a time in your conversation with an introvert where he or she needs to step away. Introverts physiologically are more easily stimulated and more sensitive to that stimulation. Extroverts are less easily stimulated, so they look for that stimulation in their environment. If you recognize that we're just wired differently that way, adapt your communication style accordingly. Even just for a few minutes, you'll be able to communicate more respectfully with anybody at that point.
Awesome.
My CEO is an extrovert, and it took us a while to find that cadence. So I work for a CEO, and I think once he understood I needed time to process things, and I understood that I couldn't overwhelm him with tons of information just spitting out because he liked things in small bites, then that went a long way. So like Eric said, just that understanding each other really helps on both ways.
Awesome, fantastic. We got another question here about how to manage the anxiety that comes from just thinking about networking or getting, not even doing it, but just thinking about it, makes people sweat. So how do you manage that anxiety?
So 4 years ago, I went to my first industry event, which was all women. It should have been comfortable for me, but I didn't know a single person. And I walked into a networking event that was just cocktails, and I don't drink. So it was cocktails. I walked in, I walked out and went back to my room and sat for about a half hour. I was just so incredibly anxious. I didn't know anyone. And I think what helped me, and it's easier for me now, it's still really hard actually, but what helped me is thinking, okay, I'm definitely not the only one who's feeling that way. And if I, like I said earlier, if I can find someone who looks as miserable as I am and just grab onto them, like Julie said, the people that I met that first night, I hung with for the next 4 years. So that really helped a lot, because there is a lot of anxiety when it comes to those kinds of things.
Awesome.
One of the things that really helps me also is not staying in my head too long about it. So like if I know that I want to make the connection or have the conversation, I just do it. But with that comes a lot of deep breaths, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Like I go through a whole meditative process about it, and that works for me. And I'm not saying that works for everyone, but there is a little bit of thought that goes into it for me. And with that comes something that just calms me down. Sometimes I might pinch myself or touch myself, just something that brings me back to reality and stops my mind, that anxiety that I'm feeling, from spiraling out of control to the point that I don't do it at all. So I try to ground myself to something that I can literally see or touch or hear, that brings me back, and then I do it. I just do it.
Awesome. We're wrapping up the conversation now. I gotta say though that a lot of things you said are also applicable for extroverts. I have a friend. He's a public speaker, and he always tells me, if you don't feel nervous when you are speaking in front of your audience, it's because you don't care about them. The reason why you're feeling that way is because you want to give the best of yourself, and that puts a lot of pressure on oneself, right? And that is true for introverts, and that is true of for extroverts. So as we wrap up our conversation, we're 1 minute over the hour. I want to ask you if there's one thing, one word of actionable item or inspiration or encouragement to your fellow and to our fellow introvert community. What would that be? One thing that they can start doing right now to begin their networking journey.
Cross the line.
Great. Yeah, I like that.
What? Say that again. Sorry, I didn't hear that one. What was that, Julie?
I said cross the line. There's actually a video, I can't remember who did it, but it's a video about crossing the line, and it talks about just stepping out of that, whether it's the fear in your mind, whether it's what other people are saying to you. And generally, when I was a little girl, my mom always used to say to me, Julie, everyone doesn't wish you well. So even though they may say they wish you well, some people don't always wish you well. And if you bear that in mind, don't always think to ask someone about what they think about what you want to do. Sometimes you have to just do it and then take the feedback from there. But cross the line, step out of your comfort zone, get out of your head, just get it done.
Steve Jobs would love what you're saying, by the way. If he was alive, that's the way he lived his life. He's like, I'm going to do it. Let's see if people like it or not. Tracy, you were going to add something?
Yeah, connect with others. They'll lift you up and help you out, and you'll find some people to find inspiration from and take a few risks.
Awesome. Thank you. Eric?
I think introverts are naturally introspective, and similar to advice that I give job seekers, learn to or become more comfortable seeing what you have traditionally perceived as challenges as opportunities and real strengths. Understand who you are, what you bring to a conversation, what you bring to a relationship, and use that to your advantage and see it as an advantage instead of something that's going to get in your way.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Julie, Eric, Tracy. I know some people in the chat want to network with you. Eric Kurshat, founder of HR Hot Seat, and he's an incredible networker. Julie in Barbados, Tracy, both in the Disrupt HR community and also, participating in a lot of the things that we do in Hacking HR. So they always say yes to networking and to supporting people and to helping people out. So please feel free to reach out to them. And thank you for being here with me in this conversation as part of we call it the You Can Do It coffee series, because, we want to inspire people to let them know that they can actually do it. That there may be sometimes some barriers that are in the physical world, but very often those barriers are right here.
Yeah.
And we always have the opportunity to, tear them down or just go around them to achieve whatever we want to achieve. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everybody. Join
Thanks,
us
Enrique. Thanks for
the next
having us.
sessions. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Enrique. Thank you all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.